The fog rolled in thick that November morning, swallowing the rocky coastline in gray silence. Maya pressed her forehead against the cold bus window, watching the world disappear into mist. At 17, she carried everything important in a worn duffel bag at her feet. 3 changes of clothes, a photo of her grandmother, and her sketchbook, filled with drawings of places she'd never been. The bus lurched to a stop at a weathered sign that read Crescent Bay, population 847. Maya was the only passenger to get off. The driver gave her a concerned look as she stepped down onto the gravel road. "You sure this is your stop, miss? Nothing much out here except rocks and water." Maya nodded, pulling her thin jacket tighter. "I'm sure. Thank you." The bus pulled away, its red taillights fading into the fog like dying embers. Maya stood alone on the empty road, listening to the distant crash of waves against cliffs she couldn't yet see. The salty air stung her nose and made her eyes water. She'd come here, following a crumpled newspaper clipping her grandmother had kept in an old jewelry box. The advertisement was simple. Lighthouse keeper needed. Room and board provided. Must be willing to work alone. Contact Harbor Master Jenkins. Most people would have thought it was crazy for a teenage girl to answer such an ad. But Maya wasn't most people. After her grandmother passed 3 months ago, she'd aged out of the foster system with nowhere to go. The group home where she'd been staying was overcrowded and loud, filled with anger that reminded her too much of earlier placements she'd rather forget. The lighthouse job meant solitude, but it also meant safety. A place where no one would bother her, where she could finally breathe. Following the hand-drawn map Harbor Master Jenkins had mailed her, Maya walked along the coastal road. The fog began to lift slightly, revealing glimpses of the town below. A handful of buildings clustered around a small harbor, fishing boats bobbing gently in the water, seabirds calling as they circled overhead. The path to the lighthouse split off from the main road, winding up a steep hill covered in wild grass that bent in the constant wind. Maya's legs burned as she climbed, her duffel bag growing heavier with each step. But when she reached the top and saw the lighthouse rising before her, something in her chest loosened. It stood perhaps 70 feet tall, painted white with a red top, though the paint was peeling in places from years of salt spray and storms. The attached keeper's house was small and square with shuttered windows, and a door that looked like it hadn't been opened in months. Vines crept up one side of the building, and several roof shingles lay scattered in the overgrown yard. But to Maya it was perfect. She found Harbor Master Jenkins waiting by the door, a man in his 60s with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore a thick wool sweater and rubber boots caked with dried mud. "You must be Maya," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Got to say, I was surprised when you answered the ad. Most young folks want nothing to do with a place this quiet." "Quiet is exactly what I need," Maya said, shaking his hand firmly. She'd learned early that people respected you more when you acted confident, even when your stomach was tied in knots. Jenkins studied her face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Everyone's got their reasons. Come on, I'll show you around." The keeper's house was dusty but structurally sound. It had a small kitchen with an old stove, a living area with a fireplace, and a bedroom barely big enough for a narrow bed and dresser. The bathroom had a clawfoot tub with rust stains and a sink that dripped constantly until Jenkins tightened something underneath it. "Plumbing's temperamental," he explained, "but it works if you're patient with it. Generators out back for electricity, though you'll want to use it sparingly. Fuel costs add up." He showed her the lighthouse tower next, climbing the spiral staircase that wound upward through the darkness. Their footsteps echoed against the metal stairs as they climbed. Maya counted 117 steps before they reached the top. The lantern room took her breath away. Glass panels surrounded them on all sides, offering a panoramic view of the ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Below, waves crashed against jagged rocks, sending up sprays of white foam. In the center of the room stood the lighthouse lamp itself, a massive Fresnel lens that caught and reflected what little light filtered through the fog. "Built in 1889, Jenkins said proudly, running his hand along the brass railing. "Used to burn whale oil, then kerosene. Now it's automated with this electric system. Your job is to make sure it stays running, clean the lens weekly, keep the stairs and tower maintained. That's it? Maya asked. It seemed almost too simple. Well, there's some paperwork, Jenkins admitted. Logbook entries, weather observations, reporting any ships in distress. But mostly, yeah, you keep the light burning and the place standing. Think you can handle it? Maya looked out at the vast gray ocean, at the fog that danced and shifted like living smoke, at the lonely beauty of this forgotten place. Yes, she said, I can handle it. Jenkins left her with supplies, canned goods, rice, dried beans, coffee, and matches. He showed her how to work the generator, how to light the backup kerosene lamps in case of power failure, and how to check the lighthouse lamp's rotation mechanism. I'll come by once a month with more supplies, he said as he prepared to leave. Radio's in the kitchen if you need anything urgent. Coast Guard monitors that channel. After he left, Maya stood in the doorway of her new home, watching him disappear down the hill toward town. The silence that followed was profound. No traffic sounds, no voices, no televisions blaring through thin walls. Just wind and waves and the occasional cry of a seabird. She spent her first day cleaning, sweeping years of dust from corners, scrubbing the kitchen until the old counters shone, washing windows until she could see clearly through them. The physical work felt good, purposeful. By evening, her muscles ached in a satisfying way. That night, Maya climbed to the lantern room to watch the light begin its automated rotation. As darkness fell, the beam swept across the water in steady intervals, cutting through the fog like a knife. She imagined sailors somewhere out there, seeing that light and knowing they were safe, that the rocks were marked, that someone was watching. The thought made her feel less alone. Days turned into weeks, and Maya fell into a rhythm. She woke early each morning to check the light, then spent her days maintaining the property. She taught herself basic repairs using books Jenkins had left behind, fixing loose shutters and patching small holes in the walls. Her hands, once soft from city living, grew rough with calluses. In the afternoons, she walked the cliffs, exploring tide pools and collecting smooth stones. She sketched constantly, filling page after page with drawings of waves and birds and the way sunlight broke through fog. Art had always been her escape, the one thing that was truly hers. The solitude that might have driven others mad felt healing to Maya. After years of chaos and crowds, of never having privacy or peace, the lighthouse offered sanctuary. Here, no one questioned her. No one told her what to do or who to be. She was simply Maya, keeper of the light. But on her 32nd day at the lighthouse, everything changed. Maya was in the lantern room, carefully cleaning the Fresnel lens with special solution Jenkins had provided, when she noticed something odd far below. A figure stood on the rocks at the base of the cliff, too close to the water's edge. The tide was coming in, which made those rocks dangerous. In another hour, they would be completely submerged. She grabbed the binoculars Jenkins had left and focused on the figure. A boy, maybe her age, with dark shaggy hair and a gray hoodie. He stood perfectly still, staring out at the ocean as waves crashed around his feet. Something about his posture, the way his shoulders slumped forward, sent alarm bells ringing in Maya's mind. She'd seen that stance before, in a girl at one of her foster homes. 3 days later, they'd found her in the bathroom with a bottle of pills. Maya dropped the binoculars and ran. She took the spiral stairs 2 at a time, nearly tripping in her hurry. She burst out of the lighthouse and sprinted across the yard, following the narrow path that led down to the rocky shore. The descent was steep and treacherous. Maya's feet slipped on loose gravel, and she had to grab at scrubby bushes to keep from falling. Thorns tore at her hands, but she didn't slow down. The boy was still visible below, now ankle-deep in surging water. "Hey!" she shouted, but the wind carried her voice away. "Hey, get back!" The boy didn't move, didn't even turn around. He took another step forward, into deeper water. A wave hit him chest-high, and he staggered but didn't retreat. Maya reached the bottom of the cliff breathing hard, her lungs burning. She jumped from rock to slippery rock, closing the distance between them. Cold spray soaked her jeans as another wave crashed nearby. "Stop!" she yelled, finally close enough to be heard. "The tide's coming in. You need to get back." The boy turned slowly, and Maya saw his face properly for the first time. He had dark circles under red-rimmed eyes, and tear tracks stained his cheeks. He looked at her with an expression of such profound sadness that it made her chest ache. "Go away," he said, his voice flat and empty. "This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't," Maya shot back, anger flaring to cover her fear. "You're standing on my rocks, near my lighthouse. That makes it my concern." "Your lighthouse?" Despite everything, a hint of confusion crossed his face. "I'm the keeper," Maya said, forcing herself to sound calm and confident. "Been here over a month, and I'm telling you, those rocks will be underwater in less than an hour. If you don't come back now, you'll get swept away." "Maybe that's the point," the boy said quietly, turning back toward the ocean. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd never talked anyone out of anything like this before. What were you supposed to say? What magic words would make someone choose living over dying? She thought about her grandmother, about the last conversation they'd had before the cancer took her voice away. "Don't let the world make you small," her grandmother had whispered, holding Maya's hand with fingers that felt like bird bones. "Don't let it convince you that you don't matter. You matter, Maya. You matter so much." "What's your name?" Maya asked, stepping closer. Water swirled around her ankles, shockingly cold. The boy hesitated, then said, "Caleb." "Caleb, I don't know what you're going through," Maya said carefully. "I don't know what brought you out here, but I do know that whatever it is, it won't seem as big tomorrow, or next week, or next month." "You don't understand," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "Nobody understands." "Try me," Maya challenged. "I've got nowhere else to be. The lighthouse isn't going anywhere, and neither am I." Another wave crashed, larger than the others, soaking them both to the waist. The cold water made Maya gasp, but she held her ground. Caleb stumbled, and Maya saw her opening. She grabbed his arm and pulled hard. "Come on," she shouted over the roar of the water. "At least get off the rocks. You want to talk, we'll talk. But not here. Not like this." For a long moment, Caleb didn't move. Then something in him seemed to crumble, and he let Maya guide him back toward safer ground. They scrambled over the rocks together, helping each other, until they reached the base of the cliff where the water couldn't reach them. They sat on a large flat stone, both shivering and soaked, and for several minutes neither spoke. Maya's heart rate slowly returned to normal as she watched the tide continue its relentless advance, covering the rocks where Caleb had been standing just minutes before. "I failed," Caleb finally said, his voice barely audible over the waves. "My parents sent me to this expensive private school. Full scholarship. I was supposed to be the smart one, the one who made it out." He pulled his knees to his chest, making himself smaller. "But I couldn't handle it. Too much pressure, too many expectations. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating, started having panic attacks in class." Maya listened without interrupting, recognizing the raw honesty of someone who'd been holding everything inside for too long. "Last week, I had a complete breakdown during finals," Caleb continued. "They had to call an ambulance. Now I'm expelled, the scholarship's gone, and my parents can't even look at me. They worked so hard to give me opportunities they never had, and I threw it all away." "You didn't throw anything away," Maya said firmly. "You got sick. That's not the same thing." "Tell that to my parents," Caleb said bitterly. "Tell that to everyone who believed in me." Maya was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "You want to know why I'm here?" she asked. "At 17, living alone in a lighthouse." Caleb looked at her properly for the first time, curiosity breaking through his misery. "I aged out of foster care," Maya said. "Been in the system since I was 8. Bounced between 12 different homes. Some okay, most not. I've seen things and lived through things that would probably shock you." She picked up a smooth pebble, turning it over in her palm. "I could have ended up anywhere. Streets, probably. Dead in a ditch somewhere. But my grandmother, before she died, she told me something important." What? Caleb asked. She said that surviving isn't the same as giving up. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just keep breathing. Keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when everything in you wants to stop. Maya looked at Caleb, her eyes serious. You had a breakdown. So what? That doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. And humans break sometimes. But here's the thing about breaking. You can also heal. I don't know if I can, Caleb whispered. Neither did I, Maya admitted. But I'm here. And so are you. That's worth something. They sat together as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The tide reached its peak and began to slowly retreat, revealing the rocks once more, like the ocean was giving them back. Where are you staying? Maya finally asked. Do your parents know where you are? Caleb shook his head. I hitched a ride from the city. Been walking along the coast for 2 days. Sleeping wherever. They probably think I'm still in the psychiatric hospital. You need to call them, Maya said. They're probably terrified. They'll just be disappointed, Caleb said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. Maya stood up, brushing sand from her wet jeans. Come up to the lighthouse. You can get warm, have something to eat, use the phone. Whatever happens next, at least do it with a clear head and a full stomach. Caleb looked up at the lighthouse, its white walls glowing in the evening light. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Someone helped me once, Maya said simply, when I had nowhere else to go. Now I'm passing it forward. They climbed back up the cliff together, taking their time, helping each other over the rough spots. By the time they reached the keeper's house, the lighthouse lamp had begun its nightly rotation, sending its beam out into the growing darkness. Maya made hot tea while Caleb sat wrapped in a blanket by the fireplace, his wet clothes hanging nearby to dry. The house felt different with another person in it, smaller but somehow warmer, more alive. You should call, Maya said gently, handing him the phone. Whatever they say, whatever happens, at least they'll know you're safe. Caleb stared at the phone for a long time before finally dialing. Maya stepped outside to give him privacy, standing in the yard and watching the stars emerge one by one from the darkening sky. She heard Caleb's voice through the open window, crying, apologizing, listening. The conversation went on for nearly an hour. When he finally came outside, his eyes were still red, but something had shifted in his expression. They're coming, he said. Tomorrow morning. My mom. She just kept saying she was glad I was alive. That nothing else mattered. See, Maya said, people surprise you sometimes. Caleb nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Does it get easier? The feeling like you're drowning. Maya thought about her answer carefully. I don't know if it gets easier exactly, but you get stronger, better at swimming, and you learn to ask for help when you need it. That night, Caleb slept on the couch in Maya's living room. She checked on him several times, making sure he was still breathing, still there. She understood what it felt like to be so close to the edge, to feel like the darkness was pulling you under. In the morning, Harbor Master Jenkins arrived with Caleb's parents, a middle-aged couple who looked exhausted and relieved in equal measure. His mother hugged him so tightly Maya thought he might break again, but this time in a different way. His father stood with tears running down his face, one hand on Caleb's shoulder as if to reassure himself his son was really there. Before they left, Caleb pulled Maya aside. Thank you, he said, for not letting me do something I couldn't take back. Thank you, Maya replied, for reminding me why I'm here, why any of us are here. As she watched their car disappear down the coastal road, Maya felt something shift inside her. For weeks, she thought the lighthouse was about hiding, about running away from the world. But maybe it was actually about bearing witness, about standing steady in the storm and shining light into the darkness. Over the following months, Maya continued her work at the lighthouse. Jenkins brought supplies and news from town. Sometimes he mentioned Caleb, how he was seeing a therapist, taking classes at the community college, working part-time at his uncle's bookstore, slowly rebuilding his life, one day at a time. Maya kept drawing, filling sketchbook after sketchbook with images of the coast. She began showing them to Jenkins, who was impressed enough to introduce her to a gallery owner in the next town over. The owner offered to display Maya's work, and to her shock, people bought them. Not enough to get rich, but enough to start saving money, to start thinking about a future beyond just surviving. On the anniversary of her first day at the lighthouse, Maya climbed to the lantern room as sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors. She'd been here a year now, longer than she'd stayed anywhere since her grandmother's house. The lighthouse had become more than just a job. It had become home. As she stood there, watching the light begin its rotation, Maya understood something her grandmother had tried to tell her. That sometimes the darkest places teach us how to shine. That sometimes we have to lose ourselves completely before we can find out who we're meant to be. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Caleb. 1 year sober from the edge. Thank you for being my lighthouse. Maya smiled, typing back. Keep swimming. The shore's closer than you think. As night fell completely, the lighthouse beams swept across the water with steady, dependable rhythm. Ships out there in the darkness would see it and know where the danger lay, where safety could be found. And up in the lantern room, a girl who'd once had nothing now had everything that mattered. A purpose, a place, and proof that sometimes salvation comes not from escaping the storm, but from learning to be the light that guides others through it. Maya pulled out her sketchbook and began to draw. Outside the windows, the ocean stretched endlessly, dark and dangerous and beautiful. But the light kept turning, kept shining, kept promising that no matter how dark the night, morning would eventually come. And that, Maya thought as her pencil moved across the page, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Years later, people in Crescent Bay would tell stories about the young lighthouse keeper who'd saved a boy from the rocks. Some versions got the details wrong. The height of the waves, the depth of the water, how close he'd been to the edge. But they all agreed on the important part, that sometimes the people who've been through the deepest darkness are the ones best equipped to shine light for others. Maya eventually left the lighthouse, though not for many years. She went to art school on scholarship, opened her own gallery, taught classes to foster kids who needed beauty in their lives the way she once had. But she never forgot those nights in the lantern room, watching the beams sweep across endless water, marking the boundary between safety and danger, light and dark, giving up and holding on. And whenever life got hard, whenever the old fears crept back and whispered that she was nothing, nobody, worthless, she remembered standing on those rocks with Caleb, remembered choosing to reach out her hand instead of walking away, remembered that in that moment, she had mattered. She had saved a life by simply refusing to look away. That was her lighthouse moment, the memory she returned to again and again. Not the building itself, though she loved it, but the knowledge that even in our darkest times, we each carry a light inside us. And when we share that light with others, when we reach into the darkness and refuse to let someone drown alone, we become something more than just survivors. We become beacons. We become proof that hope exists, that connection matters, that no one, no matter how lost they feel, is ever truly beyond reach. The lighthouse still stands on that rocky cliff, its light still turning through the night. Different keepers tend it now, but the purpose remains the same: to shine steadily through the darkness, to mark the dangers and point toward safety, to remind everyone who sees it that somewhere, someone is watching, someone cares, someone is making sure the light never goes out. And in that constant, faithful turning, there's a message worth remembering. We are not alone. We have never been alone. And as long as there are people willing to climb the tower, trim the wick, and keep the light burning, we never will be.